Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So today we're going to talk about Update 51. The second preview hit Lamania this week. If you remember, the first preview was all the way back, I think, in June. So it was actually before the Update 50 preview. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about. There's some big changes from the first preview. They've taken in feedback and they've made a lot of changes to these Epic Destinies. So we're going to go through just the overview of some of the major changes, and then we're going to go through 3 of the trees, Crusader, Dreadnought, and Fury of the Wild. Okay, but in terms of the basics, in terms of how the system overall is changing, you can go and watch my video from June where I talk about all that there. I'm not going to repeat that here. Here I'm going to talk about the Epic Destinies specifically, how things within them have changed. But if you want to see the system-wide changes, go watch that video from June. If you haven't seen it, I'll link it below in the description, because that stuff is pretty much the same. So, basic stuff when it comes to the Destinies you need to be aware of. The charge system from the first preview. So if you remember from the first preview, a lot of people didn't like this. There was a charger system where you build up charges of certain things. This existed in all the trees. They got rid of that. A lot of negative feedback regarding that. So if you didn't like that, then you'll be happy because they did remove that. Okay, epic moments. If you remember from the first preview, epic moments were just removed entirely. In this preview, they put them back in, kind of. So they are back in. So there'll be these really powerful abilities in tier 5 that we'll talk about, at least for these 3 trees, but they are different than what the Epic Destinies are currently on live. Like something like Master's Blitz is still gone. It's just the moment is different. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. When it comes to the 3 melee destinies we're going to talk about today, each of these 3 epic destinies focuses on a different type of crowd control. So Dreadnought is focused on stun, Fury of the Wild is focused on trip, and Crusader is focused on sunder. Some other things you need to be aware of. There are certain abilities that are still unique to certain trees. So for example, Mass Frog, that used to be a feat. It is now exclusive to the Primal Avatar tree. Dire Charge, which we'll talk about in Dreadnought, is still exclusive to Legendary Dreadnought, but be aware they have introduced new CC options for melee. So it's not as big of a deal that is exclusive, because currently in live, Dire Charge is seen as the best, period, the best by far, like melee CC option. But be aware of these new options they're introducing makes it not as nearly as big of a deal that you can't access Dire Charge necessarily if you're in another tree. And even that said, there are still Dire Charge options, so up to tier 4 that we'll talk about in a minute, so you can actually still use Dire Charge, though it'll be a little different than live. When we get to tier 4 Legendary Dreadnought, currently in the current preview, you can get a trip effect, not a stun effect. You'll need to go to tier 5 for stun effect, but you can still splash in Dreadnought if you want, and use it to at least some extent. Epic strike abilities. So each tree has these epic strike abilities, and to be honest, I don't remember if this was in the first preview or not, but we'll get into those with when we talk about Dreadnought here in a minute. But epic strike abilities share cooldowns with other epic strike abilities, and some of these strike abilities, for example, are in Dire Charge in Dreadnought, Consecration in Crusader, and Adrenaline in Fury. So for example, if you're casting Consecrated Ground, you can't then still use Adrenaline. So there's some balance work there because these share cooldowns, so you can't use these abilities at the same time. That's obviously for balance reasons. Destiny Mantles. So there are Destiny Mantles in each tree, and Mantles are a toggle, and those are also exclusive. So the toggle, the mantle from Crusader, for example, you can't use that and at the same time use the toggle from Fury of the Wild. Let's see, just like the heroic enhancements, there's a tier 5, in the tier 5s in these destinies are exclusive. So if you're tier 5 in Crusader, you can only go up to tier 4 in the other trees. For example, you can only have 1 tier 5. Also, there's a limit of 3 trees that you can take your points in total. So you can only use 3 trees. You can't splat. Like say you wanted to take tier 1 in like 2 different trees, and then a tier 5, and then a tier 3 in a 4th tree. You can't do that. You can only use 3 trees total. So if you want to splash at tier 1 in a tree, and that's all you want from that tree, just be aware that means you can only spend your points in 2 other trees. So that's something to be aware of. The cores for each of these melee trees, at least for the three we're going to look at today, are fairly similar in that they all provide the same amount of melee power. So each core essentially provides 10 melee power. So that's something to be aware of. But those are kind of some of the basics. Now let's get into. We'll go through Dreadnought first, and I'm gonna go again. I don't want this to be an hour-long video, so I'm gonna go kind of fast through these and be aware this is still Lamania. All this stuff is subject to change, and also it's very early for me to look at it myself. So if I've missed something, please let me know. Please comment below if you have questions or something I missed. I tried not to miss anything, but if I missed something, let me know. Some abilities I'll skim over, some I'll talk about more if I feel they're more important. Okay, let's start with the core abilities. As I mentioned before, there's effectively 10 melee power in each of these cores. So this is Dreadnought. So Fearless, you're immune to fear. Each core grants plus 15 HP and 10 melee power. So you're encouraged here to go up in the cores to get additional melee power. Also, another thing to be aware of is you can take cores in different trees. So if you can take, like, for example, the 3 cores in Dreadnought, and then also the 3 cores in Fury, for example. So you can take multiple cores and multiple trees. The cores add attack and damage with all weapons, and then thick skin is 15 PRR. Let's move on to tier 1. This tree incentivizes action boost as well. So push through the line, activating an action boost grants up to +3 to all ability scores for its duration. Epic Tactics +3 to all tactical DCs. Dire Attack. So Dire Charge in the tree starts in tier 1, and it gets better and better the farther you go in the tree. So to get what essentially you have currently on live, you need to go all the way up to tier 5, and it's kind of spaced out between them. So if you only want to splash like tier 1 or like maybe up to tier 4, you can get weaker versions of Dire Charge, but you can still kind of get Dire Charge. So if you go up to tier 4 example, like I mentioned in the intro, you can get a trip effect. You won't get the stun effect. Obviously, trip is not as stun because trip doesn't make enemies helpless. It just makes them prone, whereas helpless stun puts them in a helpless state where they take additional damage. But you can get some kind of effect. So Dire Attack, Dire Charge is also a Dire Shot option here, but it works currently like it does on live. So Dire Charge, rush forward to the targeted foe, and that foe and all nearby foes are subject to 2 weapon damage and must save or be sundered. Sundered DC is 20 plus higher stability score plus bonus to stun attacks, which is a little strange, but this tree, as I mentioned, is kind of focused on stun DCs, whereas Fury is focused on trip and Crusader is focused on sunder DCs. So whichever tree you end up focusing on, you're probably going to build your character with those DCs in mind. You will have to get the full use out of the tree. But from my feel is that it's highly encouraged on your melee to specialize in whatever CC you're using. If you're on, say, like a pure fighter or something, or pure melee like a barbarian, maybe you can fit in multiple DC equipment so you can get your DCs high. If you're on a hybrid build, like I like to run, it's probably gonna be a little harder to fit in your DCs gear, but just keep that in mind. Okay, next, Destiny Mantle. So this is the toggle that's exclusive. You can only have one. You can take multiple toggles in the trees, but you can only use one at any particular time. But this toggle, every 3 seconds while active, nearby enemies gain a stack of terror, and this toggle improves just like the other toggles as we move up the tree. So let's see, Shrug Off Punishment, up to 30 HP. You get extra action boosts, improved power attack. Don't think I need to talk about those. Multi-selector here, you can get some additional attack while flanking, or if you choose honor, you get +3 attack. Double that if you get tactician feat. So there's a lot of things built into this trees to encourage you to take certain feats that are not that popular, and we'll see that as we go through. But they try to add more reasons to take some of these lesser used feats. Okay, Combat Brute. So that this adds to your mantle, so your toggle, and while in that toggle you get additional +1 while any action boost is active. Life and Death plus up to +10 amplification, positive and negative. Now moving on to tier 3, action boost tactics. For 20 seconds you get a +6 action boost to sunder, trip, and stun DCs. Be aware, another thing with the action boost, they did take out the haste boost from Dreadnought, which is something that I think a lot of players, including myself, really didn't like, because now the only way to get the haste boost is it's in a different, like a heroic tree, for example, like Kensei, for example. So you might actually probably more encouraged to splash a level fighter on your melee builds if you're not fighter already. Let's continue. Critical damage, strike twice, we don't need to talk about. Pretty straightforward. Dread, so this adds to your, again, this adds to your toggle. So Dread, your Dread Mantle, when you have this toggle on, you get an additional 15 PRR, and it also harms nearby enemies, dealing 1d6 bane damage per stack of terror the enemy has every 3 seconds. Okay, Armor of Dusk, I don't need to talk about that, straightforward. Carry On. Okay, so this kind of is haste boost. So when you activate an action boost, and this is not haste boost, but when you activate an action boost, you get an additional 10% action boost bonus to attack speed. I believe currently haste boost on live is plus 30, so it's not quite as good. And this doesn't stack with action boost haste, so just keep that in mind. Okay, continuing on. Now, Momentum Swing. Momentum Swing and Lay Waste are now gone from the tree. However, they are in here, but it's kind of only a name only. The abilities are completely different. So this is what Momentum Swing does. This Momentum Swing now adds to Dire Charge. So what this Momentum Swing does is when you use Dire Charge, enemies must now save or be tripped. So Momentum Swing in Tier 4, if you take up to Tier 4, you can get a trip effect on your Dire Charge, effectively, as I've talked about a few times already. And the DC is to stun attacks, even though it's the trip, even though it causes trip, which is really kind of odd, but it does add, it is based on your stun. I guess that's to keep everything kind of easier to gear for, so you don't have to necessarily gear for multiple different types of CC. So if you're a fighter, you can just focus on, and when you're running Dreadnought, you can just focus on stun. You don't have to have like put in multiple CC DCs if you don't want to. Okay, let's see. Strike with Fear is pretty self-explanatory. Kick while they're down. So Dread Mantle, this is another effect that adds to your toggle. When you have your toggle on, you deal an additional up to 15% damage to helpless opponents. Untouchable, this is really cool. So when any action boost is active, you have displacement. So that's pretty neat, and that's a really nice defensive ability. Granted, it's displacement, so it's not going to stack with any other kind of concealment item you have on, but it is really nice quality of life thing to have. Let's see, Tier 5. Okay, Tier 5, so this is the tier that's exclusive, so you can only have one Tier 5. So multi-selector, you get an additional critical multiplier on either bludgeoning, slashing, or piercing. Kind of a standard thing we see at the top of a lot of these melee trees to just give you an overall damage boost. Legendary Rally, so this is a really good cleave attack, or you can get a ranged version as well. But what this does, attack is considered an automatic critical, can be used while crowd control, and clears all crowd control effects when used. 30-second cooldown. So that's really nice. You've got effectively like a Harper Pin effect, and it's an automatically critical for a cleave. I mean, that's freaking awesome. So you're really going to like that. The range version, fire a shot at your targeted foe, same kind of thing. Automatic critical, can dispel crowd control. So that's really awesome. Okay, Lay Waste. So here's the version of Lay Waste we have, which it's completely different than what's on live, but this turns your Dire Charge effectively into what it is currently on live, a stun effect. Stun obviously being better than trip, as I explained before, but there you go. The last thing is your Epic Moment. Oh, actually, let's talk about the Dust Surge first. Dust Surge is the final Tier 5 that adds more to your toggle. While in Dread Mantle, striking with weapons now has a chance to regenerate an action boost. Does not stack with other abilities that can regenerate action boost. So, pretty cool. Action, and remember, you have a lot of other abilities that make action boosts even better, like the ability we talked about before that does displacement. So there's a lot of incentive to get a lot of action boosts and use them a lot in this Destiny. Okay, Action Boost Action Hero Epic Moment. So this is the new Epic Moment that they have. It's not Master's Blitz, but this is what it is. For 20 seconds, you gain the following bonuses. And this ability is counted as an action boost, so anytime any of your other effects, like the displacement effect we talked about a few times, those also get added on when you use this. But this, even though it counts as an action boost, does not have charges and does not share a cooldown. But it does not share cooldown, but it itself has a 5-minute cooldown. So this is a short, a powerful ability, but one you can only use you can use rarely, essentially, because it's 5-minute cooldown and it only lasts for 20 seconds. So it has a really long downtime to where you can't use it. but while it's active, it's super powerful. So this is what it does: plus 8 action boost to attack, plus 30 action boost to melee and range power, plus 30% action boost to attack speed, double strike, and double shot, plus 50% action boost bonus to movement speed, plus 15 action boost bonus to AC and PRR, plus 15% action bonus to dodge, plus 6 action boost bonus to sunder, trip, stun, DCs, saving throws, and all skills. So awesome abilities, just you can't use it very much, but that's kind of your epic moment that you have now in place of your Master's Blitz, a really powerful ability, but one you can't use a lot, and that's a theme that's shared throughout the trees. So that's all I have for Dreadnought. Let's move on and go on to Fury now, and after we do that, we'll go through Crusader, and then I'll give you kind of my overall initial thoughts on these. So let's go to the top here, talk about Fury of the Wild. So Fury of the Wild, the cores. So core 1, you gain the diehard feat. Each core grants plus 20 hit points as well as 10 melee power. So just like the other cores we're going to talk about, each gives you 10 melee power each. The thing with the Fury cores that makes them kind of unique is you get a lot of extra unconsciousness range. So core 3 is plus 100, and then core 6 is plus 250 unconsciousness range. So that's pretty cool. And you get Die Hard. So Die Hard feat automatically in core 1. That makes you automatically stabilize when you are unconscious. So cool, get some survivability there. Let's continue on. Enduring plus 6 PRR, Savage Takedown. I don't need to talk about that. Pretty obvious. More trip DCs. Okay, Epic Strike. So this is the thing that is exclusive. So you can't. So it has a shared cooldown with the other abilities we talked about. So Dire Charge and Dreadnought, and then Crusader's Consecration that we'll talk about in a little bit. But it's Adrenaline. So the tier 1 version of Adrenaline gives you up to plus 75% damage, increases your threat by up to 16. So as you notice, it's only 75% extra damage. So Adrenaline is weaker than live at tier 1, and you kind of get back to the current version of it as you move up the tree. So as you move up the tree, you can take additional enhancements for Adrenaline to make your Adrenaline better and better and better. But initially at tier 1, it only gives you plus 75% damage. Also, be aware, it now has an 8-second cooldown. So before, you could kind of spam. Currently in live, you can kind of just spam it, and you get charges back so much that it kind of have Adrenaline like a lot currently alive, but it does have an 8-second cooldown now, so you can't use it as much. But that said, it no longer has charges, so you don't have to worry about running out of charges. So you can also take Quick Cutter, which is I looked at this and I'm like, well, who's really going to take Quick Cutter? It seems I don't know, I feel like everyone's going to take Adrenaline, but this is what Quick Cutter does. Instead of Adrenaline, you get plus 2 weapon damage, plus 2 critical threat. When you use this skill, you gain the effect Quick, which grants plus 6% dodge from 9 seconds. If you use this skill again while Quick is active, you instead apply Cutter to your target. And Cutter gives 46 bane damage per character level every 2 seconds for 12 seconds, stacks 3 times, and scales with 200% melee power. I'm not, maybe someone will show that this is good, but for me, damage over time effects tend to be not as preferable just because trash and DDO tends to die fast. So I look at this and personally, and maybe someone you call correct me if there's some math I'm not seeing here that makes this good, but for me, I guess they're targeting this more at kind of your roguey, evasive kind of builds, but for me, I would rather have just the burst damage from Adrenaline, just kill stuff outright. But in any case, it adds that bane damage if you want that. But let's continue on. Mantle of Fury. So this is the toggle for Fury. Destiny Mantle. You gain 15% damage against helpless targets while this is active. And you also heal up to 60-10 hit points every 15 seconds. Scales with the highest of positive spell power or 200% melee power. So this is one of the few different healing abilities that Fury has. So one thing you'll notice about Fury, and I think a lot of people are really going to like this tree, Dreadnought and Fury, I think both are going to be really, really well received. Other than a couple things like losing haste boost, but in Dreadnought, but there's a lot of healing added for barbarians here, so you're gonna like this a lot if you're a barbarian. But you can passively get some healing here. Granted, it's 60-10, but it does scale with highest of positive spell power, melee power. So there you go. Acute senses. I don't need to talk about that. It's straightforward. Fast and the Furious. This is an active attack. So charge a target, dealing up to +3 weapon damage and up to +2 critical hit multiplier. And if this is a single attack, I do believe this is a single attack. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure this is a single attack. When you activate this ability, if you are raging, the cooldown is immediately reset. This cooldown reset may only happen once every 10 seconds, independent of the skill's cooldown. It requires a melee weapon to use, and it has up to an 8-second or down to an 8-second cooldown. So there you go. Something that's kind of a lower tier ability you can get and kind of spam, especially if you can reset the ability. So let's continue on. Fear My Vengeance, +3 damage to shaken foes, and you do have an ability here to make enemies shaken in the new version of Primal Scream that we'll talk about in a minute. Actually, in just 2 seconds here. I'm always angry. You gain the Barbarian Rage feat. So yeah, even if you're not a Barbarian, you can get Barbarian Rage. Plus you get up to +3 extra uses of Rage. Primal Scream. So Primal Scream has changed. They've changed it from, as it is currently on live, it's more of a straight buff ability. Essentially, I think it does some damage, but I've never known anyone to use it for damage. But now it has some additional effects that will make you want to use it for more than just a buff. So tier 2, it still gives the buff effect. Granted, it's lesser at tier 2, but you do get some of that back as you move up the tree. So at tier 2, nearby allies gain a +2 morale bonus to strength and constitution for 5 minutes. This effect cannot be refreshed until the first one expires. Nearby enemies take 1d20 sonic damage and are shaken. So here you go. You have the ability to make some foes shaken, and Fear My Vengeance, as we talked before, gives you extra damage to shaken foes. The damage scales the highest of 200% melee power or sonic spell power, 30-second cooldown. And this, I believe, does not have a set number of charges, so you don't have to worry about running out of charges now. Guardian's Demons, you can get the ability to bypass silver and cold iron DR, so that's pretty nice. Tier 3, especially if you don't get that on like an augment or something or some other way. Tier 3, Sense Weakness. So Sense Weakness, this adds now onto your Destiny Mantle. So that's your toggle. So this, when you have your toggle on, and this is different from how Sense Weakness currently is on live, completely different, but it is something that where they've kept the name of the ability sounded different. But you can get up to 6% fortification bypass with this toggle on. Your Fury Destiny Mantle grants you an additional 15% damage, also against helpless targets. Let's see, the rest of this stuff, multi-selector, that's obvious, straightforward, we don't need to talk about that. Eternal Rage, if you're not raging and you're out of rage charges, you have a percentage chance, up to 3%, to gain a charge of rage back, so you can regenerate rages a little bit here. Multi-selector, I don't think we need to talk about this one. Furious Force, let's see, +1 strength while raging, and increases it. Okay, and this also increases your damage bonus. Yeah, we do need to talk about that. So you can get this is where you can get more of your adrenaline damage bonus back as you move up the tree, to match what it currently is on live. Spirit of the Beast, or to help match what it currently is on live. Spirit of the Beast, this adds to the kind of cutter option if you don't want to go with adrenaline. +3 attack bonus, rank 3. You gain the effects of Ram's Might and Animal Growth are doubled on you. Okay, so actually that's not tied to the cutter, but I don't believe it is. So you all correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if that's tied directly to the cutter option, but it's actually not very clear there. I'm assuming it is, since Furious Force is for adrenaline. I'm assuming that's tied to cutter, but you all let me know if I'm wrong. Embrace the Pain, because it doesn't say that specifically like it does under Furious Force. But anyways, Embrace the Pain. When you are below 40%, up to 40%, it can either be 15, 25, or 40 of your maximum hit points. You gain 2d10 hit points every 6 seconds. So that's more regeneration for you as a barbarian. This scales with the highest of positive spell power, 200% melee power. So if you are really low in health, you can at least get up to 40% from this regen, and it's on top of the other regen that we've already talked about. So there's multiple regens here for people in this tree. Okay, moving up to tier 4. Voice of Fury doubles the damage of your Primal Scream. If Adrenaline or Quick is active when you use Primal Scream, it triples the damage instead. And nearby enemies have a 75% chance to become confused for 3 seconds with no save. So that makes your Primal Scream also a CC ability. So there you go. And there's no save on this one, but it is only for 3 seconds, and it is only Confusion. And then it says Adrenaline and Quick are consumed. Top Dog, you can get the improved Trip Feat. Multi-selector here, Overwhelming Force, which does apply to this Adrenaline or Quick Cutter ability here, Overwhelming Force. And I'm assuming, actually, since this is colored green, this applies to Adrenaline, but the other one, I guess, does not apply specifically to Cutter, because if it did, it would be labeled as green. So I can kind of correct myself above. Okay, Overwhelming Force, +3 bonus to hit, increases your Adrenaline effect by additional 75%, up to 75%. Rank 3, melee attacks under the effect of Adrenaline cause knockdown on target for 4 seconds. Primal Force, attack +3 attack bonus and up to +6 fortification and up to +3 attack bypass, fortification bypass. Rank 3, if you are dual wielding using punch weapons or an animal form, gain +2% epic damage bonus to all physical attacks. Let's see, multi-selector, wade through, we don't need to talk about, straightforward. Unquenchable Rage, reduce all damage by up to 15% for 6 seconds after you consume a rage charge or use Primal Scream. Rank 3, and this is really attractive, I think, going to be to Barbarians. Now also applies a copy of the Heal spell to you, which scales with the highest melee power or 200% positive spell power. So, a lot of options for healing for people in this tree. So Barbarians, you're going to like this. You can get 2 different regions, and you can get a heal effect when you can consume a rage charge or use Primal Scream. So, pretty awesome. Okay, tier 5. So Lure of the Wilds, every 2 Wilderness Lore feats now grant 1% primal bonus to maximum hit points. So I believe the classes that get Wilderness Lore feats will be all the primal ones. So like Druid, Barbarian, Ranger, those classes, I believe. But you can get, if you're in one of those classes and you have those lore feats, you can get extra hit points. Scarred by Chaos, plus 50 hit points and 10 PRR, doubled if you have the Embodiment of Chaos feat. So that's another incentive to take one of these feats that a lot of people don't take. So, and this is their epic moment, Unbridled Fury, same name as before, though it's very different. For the next 30 seconds, you gain 1,000 unconsciousness range. You heal for 10% of your max hit points every 5 seconds, and your strength, dexterity, and constitution are increased by half of their base values. So, pretty cool. But be aware, it's one of these that has a 30-second duration, but a long 5-minute cooldown. So just be aware of that. You can't spam it. But that's their kind of replacement epic moment for Fury. Nature's Fury, +1 critical damage multiplier on rolls of 19 or 20 if using 2-handed weapons, dual wielding punch weapons, or animal forms. So another kind of base damage boost. A lot of these Destinies, these melee Destinies have that. So the Great Leveler, this is a freaking awesome melee active attack. So Great Leveler, +6 weapon damage and +16 critical threat range. This attack creates a shockwave that affects all enemies in a short, narrow line. The length and width of this line doubles if Adrenaline or Quick is active, consuming those effect, and applies Trip. So here's your incentive to get a Trip DC on, if you're going tier 5 this tree. The DC for this attack is based on Trip. I did notice when I was testing this on live, it's kind of a slower attack. It has an animation where your character raises their arm and kind of punches the ground to create the shockwave. And it's not super slow, but it's a little bit slower than you might be thinking, than you might expect from a CC ability. Like, for example, like Stunning Blow is faster. So just be aware of that. You'll have to test it out yourself. Okay, let's continue now to Divine Crusader. So Divine Crusader. The cores in Divine Crusader, they work like a lot like the other cores. So they add +10 melee power for each core. And actually, the core 1 says each core, including this one, provides +15 hit points, +10 melee power, and 8 range power. Core 3, confront any foe. Your weapons are immune to durability damage and +3 saving throws. Core 6, +5 AC and PRR, +15 healing, repair, and negative amp. So there you go. Tier 1, Divine Smite, you gain the Smite Evil feat. So anyone here will have Smite Evil, +1 uses of Smite Evil. Enhances Smite Evil by adding 5 effective paladin levels to its damage calculation. And Smite Evil attacks grant you and nearby allies healing. So you got a kind of a passive healing ability, sort of not, I guess not passive since you have to activate the Smite, but you get some healing there. Spear of Justice, we don't need to talk about that or the next few. These are pretty obvious. So Consecration, Divine Epic Strike. So this is the strike that Epic Strike that Crusader gets, which is again shares a cooldown with Adrenaline. It shares a cooldown with Dire Charge. But it works like it is currently on live. Consecrated ground. While spanning on the ground, you and your allies are healed by 3 seconds for 1 point of positive energy, and it's affected by positive spell power. And it has the lowest cooldown you can get is 20 seconds, and it lasts 15 seconds. And this improves as you go up the tree, just like it's just as other trees have with their various toggles and strikes and everything. Okay, let's see. I don't think the next few are pretty straightforward here. Holy Mantle, so this adds to your toggle. Weapons and shields you wield are considered to have your alignment for DR purposes. So that's pretty awesome. So if you're lawful good, you get lawful and good DR bypass, for example. Or if you're chaotic good, you get chaotic, whatever. If you're true neutral, you won't get any bonus, presumably. Your base attack bonus is now equal to your character level, so that's pretty nice. So you may not have to cast something like Divine Power if you're a cleric anymore, because you kind of get a base attack bonus equal to your character level, so that's pretty nice. Let's continue on. I think the next few are pretty straightforward. Shield of Light, though, probably worth mentioning. Up to +6 PRR and MR. Rank 3, you gain magic missile immunity as per the shield spell while holding a shield. So there are, one of the other themes you'll see here is they've added stuff for shield users here. So it's not, shield users aren't exclusively in, say, the Unyielding Sentinel tree. There's more stuff in here for shield users that are may not necessarily be tanks. So you may be like a Vanguard. So there's some stuff in here for you. Let's see, a lot of this stuff probably not worth talking about. Gaze of the Divine, though, really nice. You get True Seeing and Blindness immunity, so it can save you some augment slots or gear slots. Crusade, works as it does currently on live. It makes your consecrated ground better. It adds a +10% damage buff for anyone in the circle and burns enemies within it. Axiom of Faith, choose a religion from a full list of religions, and you can get considered a follower, so you can get an additional favored weapon. So you get anything that has boosts tied to favored weapon. You can now get if you take this. That's applied to that specific weapon that you take. Strike with Poise, so this adds to your toggle. Your Divine Crusader Mantle grants favored weapons an additional +3 to their enhancement bonus. Favored weapons are now considered impellents, so you automatically and gain one weapon damage. How Dare You, being struck by magic, has a up to 30% chance to regenerate Smite Evil, and at rank 3, getting hit below 50% will automatically consecrate the ground beneath your feet. So that's pretty cool, a passive way to cast Consecration, and a way to regenerate Smite Evils. Purge the Wicked, we don't need to talk about, pretty obvious, although it gives you more of a reason to take Power Critical feat, because this doubles if you have Power Critical. Let's see, let's talk about Heavenly Presence. This is something else that applies to your toggle, so when you have your toggle active, your Divine Crusader Destiny Mantle, you gain the traits of a Celestial. You get +10 PRR and 10% acid, cold, and electricity absorption. In addition, you're immune to petrification, so that's similar to what we have currently on live. Cower Before Me, although it is tied to a mantle now. Cower Before Me, so this further makes your consecrated ground better. So when you use Consecrate, nearby enemies must make a Fortitude save or become cowered for 4 seconds. Cower makes enemies helpless for the duration. Only sentient creatures, undead, aberrations, and outsiders may be cowered. So constructs, oozes, etc. are immune. But that still covers, I would say most of the monsters in the game. I mean, there's a ton. Most of the monsters in DDO tend to be undead or humanoids. So there you go. Yeah, it's going to apply to most enemies. Rend Armor, you gain the improved Sunder feat. Oh, also be aware that there is a Fortitude save applied to Consecrate, and that Fortitude save, as I mentioned before, is based on your Sunder DC. So you're kind of encouraged to get a high Sunder DC or gear for that in this tree, so you can get this cower effect. Rend Armor, where you talked about, you can get improved Sunder. directly from this tree. Epic Moment Celestial Steed, and this is something I wanted to test out on Lamania in the past couple days, but it doesn't appear to be in the current build. But anyways, what this will do is it will conjure a Blessed Mount and travel forwards for 4 seconds while retaining the ability to steer your character. So it'll probably work like a charge attack. I would assume it would just have probably has like some kind of horse animation, I would assume. But what this does, it makes you immune to CC for the duration and for 20 seconds after that. And enemies you run over while on this mount are subject to a cower effect and a divine sundering effect. And what Divine Sundering does is minus 10% AC, minus 25% fortification, minus 3 saving throws. And the cower effect, I don't think it's noted here, but on live, the cower effect was noted to not have a save. So that's for this epic moment, so that's nice. But be aware, this is one of the abilities you can only use sparingly. It's going to have a 5-minute cooldown. It doesn't note it here, but on live, I believe, and I'm working off memory, I believe it had 5-minute cooldown, just like the other one. So you all correct me if I'm wrong there, but I believe it does have a 5-minute cooldown. A Law of the Divine, you gain the Embodiment of Law feat. If you already had it, you instead enhances the feat to deal 1d6 law damage per epic level, scaling with 200% melee or ranged power, and apply a stack of vulnerability and armor destruction on hits. So you get a little more incentive to take another feat that isn't that popular. I believe the stack of vulnerability and armor destruction on critical hits, those are exclusive to whether you have already taken that feat or not, so you get that regardless, and you get the feat itself from this toggle, but if you already have it, you get an additional bonus, so that's kind of cool. All right, bring down Wrath. Your shield is now considered a favored weapon for the purposes of your Divine Crusader Destiny Mantle, so this is something that makes your toggle better, and now double strikes at 50% of the rate of your main hand double strike as if it were an offhand weapon. So this is not going to help you unless you use a shield, so this is pretty strictly for Vanguards. I don't know how I feel about that, to have a tier 5 ability like this only be applied to Vanguards. I feel like it kind of excludes, like, say, like melee favorite souls, melee clerics who want to use this tree. I wish there's something like maybe a toggle that also gave an additional benefit for those type of characters in here, so it wasn't just strictly for shield users, but this is how it is currently. Blessed Blades, this is kind of the standard flat critical boost, so you get a +1 critical multiplier on a roll of 19 to 20, similar to what's in other trees. Mighty Crusade, Smite evil attacks applied through the Crusade buff to your entire party for 4 seconds, so that's pretty cool. Smite evils can also boost the damage of your party, so that's 10% for 4 seconds. You gain +1 in AC and PRR for every 2 religious lore feats, and you get those if you're in a divine class, so like cleric or paladin, for example. So I think that's about it for these trees. So, overall thoughts, the trees, I think Fury and Dreadnought look really good. I think though I think barbarians and fighters are gonna be really happy, or just melee characters, people that are anyone who wants to use those trees in like more of a pure traditional melee class is probably gonna be really happy. I think barbarians are gonna love Fury. I think it's really awesome what they've done with Fury. I think it looks really cool, and Dreadnought as well. Crusader, they've built kind of, especially with the tier 5 ability you've already gone through, it kind of seemed to be, to me, the tree just seems to be a little bit overly focused on Vanguards. I would like to see more stuff in here for like melee clerics or melee favorite souls who don't want to use a shield, because on a melee cleric or melee favorite soul, you can't really build your character to have a shield unless you splash paladin, because cleric favorite souls, they don't get a shield, any kind of shield melee tree like like fighters and paladins do. So I'd like to see, maybe that's probably my biggest gripe with this tree. This adds something that's not just for shields to the tier 5 ability here for the toggle. But other than that, guys, I think that one of the big takeaways is that these trees are very different, very, very different. So I think that this update 51 combined with update 50 and the stat squish, I think there's going to be a learning curve, and it's so early that I can't really say if these trees are good or how they stack up. I did run some quests yesterday just very briefly to test out some of these abilities and see what it felt like. It's definitely because the scale, it's going to feel, you're going to feel weaker at, say, your low mid epic levels, because a lot of these tiers, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the video but I forgot, but these trees, just like heroic enhancements, are level gated. So you can only take up to, say, I think it's level 23 is when you can first get over tier 2, for example. I believe it's gated like 23, 26, and 30. I talked about that in my June video that I've linked below and talked about if you want to look at that. But these are level gated, so you're going to feel weaker at low and mid epic levels. But at least at my brief running in these various trees, it felt pretty equivalent at level 30 to what you have on live. It's just different. I think that everyone's going to have to really think about their characters, their in-game characters, and with update 50 combined with update 51 that's coming, it's just you're basically everyone's gonna have to relearn how to play the freaking game after at least after level 20. I mean, it's just such a huge change. They aren't just revamping the system here, they're revamping, like, every single tree is completely different. For the most part, it's completely different. So you're gonna have to learn. You're really gonna have to look at your characters, and I'm probably gonna have to completely redo my character and my gear set after update 51 hits live. It's gonna be a process. I know a lot of people are gonna hate that. A lot of people are gonna love that. So depending on your perspective, it's gonna feel like a breath of fresh air, or it's gonna feel like a chore to have to relearn all this stuff. So who knows? It's gonna either freshen up the game for you, or it's going to you may just see it as a chore to have to relearn this stuff. So that's really up to you. But guys, it's very early. As I play more with these trees, I'll probably have more thoughts. But as of right now, I guess my overall thoughts is Crusader, a little slightly disappointed in. Things like the tier 5 bring down Wrath only being for shield users. I feel like with my character, I don't know with a melee cleric what I'm going to do with my build yet. I'll have to figure it out as I go along. But Fury looks amazing. Dreadnought looks amazing. They both look really fun, and I'm sure they'll be really powerful, at least at level cap. Also, be aware, guys, and I should have mentioned this again at the beginning of the video, there are only 3 cores in each of these trees for now, but there will be cores 4, 5, and 6 added as the level cap increases. And judging by the pattern here, we'll probably get, I'm going to speculate, we'll probably get a level up to level 40 when they do the cap increase. But there will be more cores introduced to these trees as the level cap increase when that happens. And we'll see when that happens and what format that happens, if it's a gradual thing, if they do like 5 levels and then 5 levels later in the year, or what. But I'm expecting that for sure in 2022, although the developers have not confirmed any of that. As far as the other trees go, I don't know if I'll make other videos on, say, like Primal Avatar and some of the other trees that were up for preview, maybe, but I wanted to, at least in this video, give some of the basics, and I wanted to talk about at least the 3 trees that I'm the most knowledgeable in and I'm the most interested in. So if you guys have comments, any of that stuff, leave that below. I'll be happy to answer what I can when I can get to it. Other than that, guys, you can catch me streaming. I've been streaming a lot lately. This is kind of self-promotional thing. Twitch.tv/AxelAlexK if you want to check me out. I'm doing a lot of streaming now. So give me if you wouldn't mind, I'd really appreciate it if you give me a follow over there. It would help me out. But guys, yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Would be interested in reading your comments, so comment below about any thoughts or questions or your reactions. Would be interested in hearing that. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it for this video. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one. Take care.